Welcome to Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley, the podcast that empowers you to live life on your terms. Are you uninspired, bored, and unhappy with where life has taken you? And yearning for a life filled with purpose and passion? Look no further. We are here to ignite that fire within, to awaken your true potential, and to guide you on a journey towards absolute freedom. Join us as we delve into the minds of incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders from very different backgrounds with incredible stories. Be inspired by their resilience and learn from their challenges they faced along the path to success. These are the brave individuals who fight every day to awaken people to the power of self-responsibility and who inspire them to create a life they are absolutely in love with. Each episode will explore the concept of conscious income creation, building a business or creating a career that aligns with your unique skill set, purpose, values, and belief system. Discover the strategies, tips, and invaluable insights shared by our guests as they guide you towards making a living doing what you love. It's time to break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the freedom that awaits. Are you ready to take control of your life? Are you ready to step into the life you've always dreamed of? Then welcome to Freedom Motivated, the podcast that will ignite your spirit and unleash your potential. Good. All right. I'm excited today to welcome my guest, Mr. Tony Ferraro, to the Freedom Motivated podcast with Christina Whiteley. I am so excited to have this conversation because we connected last week and I was like, man, I got to have you on the podcast. And so Tony and I met a few years back. He had partnered up with Jordan Adler and was doing a book series called Momentum Makers. And there were different chapters. It was like chicken soup for the soul for the network marketer, right? To help people move through different challenges of team building and leadership and social media and recruiting and all the things that comes alongside a business and building a successful business. But Tony is so much more than that. I know we'll talk a little bit about your publishing stint for a while, but you're also an entrepreneur and a CEO and a coach and a trainer who's worked with high performance humans. You've worked with churches and nonprofits. You are highly decorated when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I'm just really excited to have this conversation today because, life works in really interesting ways, how people come into your life and ebb and flow. And some people stay for a little bit, some people stay for a long time. But as we evolve, it's the journey really that matters. It's not that final destination, it's the journey. And that was kind of our conversation last week. And I was like, we got to just have this online. We got to have this conversation on the podcast. So Tony, I'm so excited that you're here today. And I just love for you to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you.
Oh, well, thanks for that. Yeah, it's such a great opportunity and a wonderful honor, obviously, to be here with you. I definitely appreciate it. And it's just so fun to talk to you. Man, have I had a crazy life? There's no other way to say it. I remember in I guess it was 2000, and I had an entrepreneurial startup at the time. And there was this female friend of mine, and I was real excited about that entrepreneurial startup, like anybody would be. And I was running after it, and I was chasing it, and she'd check in every once in a while. And finally, one day she called me and she said, how's that going? And unfortunately, I had just come to the resolution that it wasn't going to work. And so with her on the phone, I was standing in a parking lot in Newport Beach, California. And she said, so how's that business doing? And I said, you know what? I failed. And the phone went silent, and I just kind of hung there for a second. And she said, okay, well, how do you feel about that? And I thought about it. I said, you know what? I actually feel pretty good about it. Definitely not the answer she was looking for. And she said, what do you mean you feel good about it? And I said, well, the reality is I've finally figured out what I am, right? This is 24 years ago. I finally figured out I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I am. And I'd rather spend the rest of my life failing chasing what I want than working to make someone else's house payment. And luckily, in the years that followed that, I sort of figured out now how to be an entrepreneur and became quite successful at it and had a couple of very nice exits and ended up, coaching a lot of other companies and CEOs around the world. And it turned into a wonderful, wonderful career for me. But it started with failure, really, that big recognition, that aha moment, as it probably does for a lot of folks who step out to try and pursue their dreams. It starts with failure. And that failure produces freedom in the end when you continue to push and you break through and you learn and you iterate and you chase after your dreams. And so that's really what life is about for me now, is that everything really starts with a dream, and you know, you got to go after it. And if you don't, you're just going to lay in bed at the end of your life staring at the ceiling going, why didn't I? And I don't want that. That's the question I don't want to be asking.
Yeah, 100%. And isn't it
And
interesting, that we're raised in this system, in this education system, where we're trained to be employees, really, is what it comes
mm,
down to, right? And it's right and wrong, black and white, good and bad. And we're trained to fall in line. And entrepreneurship is like the opposite of that, right? It's like racing towards your failures as fast as you can so you can learn from them. It's embracing them. It's getting excited about them because it didn't work out this way, but what if we try it again this way? And I think that
mhm.
so often in the early days of entrepreneurship, people get really hung up on those failures and they beat themselves up and they think it's them. They think maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this wasn't the right thing. Maybe, I lost some money in this business, and that can be really challenging for entrepreneurs in the beginning because they finally had the courage to step out and do something different, finally had the courage to do something that is beyond the scope of average. Because, like, let's face it, 7 or 8% of the population are entrepreneurs. Not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. The crazy
Yeah.
best people that are, we start to understand that we have to think a lot differently than most people, and that those failures are just the way forward. So what's kind of going on since that first business that failed, and I think that this is a really important conversation because often people think it's that first business. If I don't make it work, I'm a failure and that's it. I'm just going to go back to what's easy, right? It's so easy to go back and get a job and doing what you were doing previously. But really what entrepreneurship is constantly failing forward and evolving. And you never really get to the destination. You're just constantly evolving into this new human, and these new opportunities and new things come up, and you get to decide, do I want to say yes to this or do I want to say no? And it's like this really actually exciting adventure that you go on. So to talk a little bit more about what that adventure has been for you.
Yeah, man, so much to unpack in everything you just said. You know, like I said, everything starts with a dream. You don't get a cup of coffee in the morning without having an idea to go get a cup of coffee. So everything starts with a dream. The problem is that exactly what you said. People make the mistake of presuming that the one dream I have is the one that I have, and I'll never have another one. And then when they don't make it, they fail. And when they fail on the first one, they think they're a failure. And the interesting component of that is, I mean, just statistics show, what is it, like 80% of all businesses close in the first 2 years. So what that means is that 8 out of 10 ideas that you pursue are probably going to fail. The failure rate is just at that level. So what that means is that if you're going to decide to pursue something like this, you got to pursue the long road. You either commit that this is what I'm doing and you push yourself through it all. And that's really what it was like for me. You know, I honestly have no idea how many businesses I failed at before. I really don't. I mean, and the crazy thing is there's so much that uh, constructs failure that you have no control over, right? So first of all, one of the things I like to share with people is this: when the space shuttles used to go on a 7 to 10 day mission, they would spend 98% of their fuel in the first 3 minutes of flight. 98% of their fuel was spent in the first 3 minutes of flight. They were going to be gone for a week to a week and a half running on 2% of their fuel. And what a lot of entrepreneurs don't sit back and take sort of a tally of is, do I have the energy, the time, the resources, and the passion to get through the 98% that it's going to take to get through the launch, right?
Wow.
And the launch is not the finish line. That's the starting line, right? And
Yeah.
and that's the point, is that it's the same thing with the space shuttle. Getting into the sky is just the beginning. And so, for us as entrepreneurs, that journey, you asked about that. I mean, gosh darn it, if I really truly, if I were to go back and go, how many failures did I have? I'd have a list, and it'd be a long one. What ended up happening when we turned the corner into success was, and by the way, I was talking, I kind of got sidetracked by myself. What I said was, there's so many things that happen that are outside of your control that produce failure. In 1999, if you take your head back to 1999, okay, this is 1999. In 1999, I had an idea for a manufacturer direct shopping portal. This is before shopping.com. This is before Amazon.com was selling anything but books. This was way back. And as I went to try and raise money, try to convince everybody on the planet that one day people were going to buy direct from manufacturers and they were going to drop ship direct to consumers, nobody believed me, right? So that was clearly outside of my control. I didn't have control of the timing of the market. I didn't have control of the belief of everyone around me. I didn't have control over any of that, and that produced failure. Now, was I right? I was 1,000% right. You know, you look at the market now, and I was 1,000% right. I was just too early, and so that's that component of timing. There's all kinds of things that work into producing success, and unfortunately, so many entrepreneurs, they think because they have an idea that that's what's an entrepreneur. No, everybody on the planet has ideas. There's not a single person walking up and down the road that doesn't have ideas. We all have them. What makes you an entrepreneur is how you respond to problems and how you solve them, regardless of what's telling you no, right? That's what makes you entrepreneurial, is how you solve the problem to make it real. Having the idea is not enough. It's about, you know, do you have the fortitude to push through it? And so for us, you know, we had, when I finally built the company that was the first, you know, big success for us, we were operating out of our house in Southern California. We had 13 employees coming to our house every single day. My wife was more gracious than you could ever imagine. We had an 8-foot whiteboard on one wall. I had the company logo on another wall. I had computers all over the downstairs, and we had 13 employees, and I had $50,000 a month in payroll, and we ate ramen noodles, and that's God's truth.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's the truth. And you know, eventually we turned it into something, and that's just it. Is people need to understand, you typically go a lot further down before you go up.
I think that that's really what makes the difference to people that truly become really successful, is that they go through the mud longer without giving up, right? And I'm so glad that you said that, because people will sit and look at people that are making multiple millions of dollars and be like, wow, how did they do that? And it's like, well, they also have, you know, $50,000 to $80,000 in payroll and running costs a month, you know, and they don't realize what, like, bigger paychecks, more money means bigger headaches, more problems, other things that you have to work through. Like, you literally have to build a team out of people. You can't do it alone. And most people don't make it past the first step because they've got up here and they count themselves out. And I love that you talk about problem solving. This is why I talk about it all the time, because entrepreneurship is just reinventing yourself over and over and over for current problems in the marketplace and evolving with those current problems in the marketplace. And if you can see them faster, that timing piece, if you can see them faster than most people and you can solve them faster and better than most people, then you'll succeed. But it takes that long-term vision of, like, I am just going to continue. And I always look outside. I know I'm like looking out here because I literally face like a mountain out here. And that's what I think of entrepreneurship, is that I'm just like, man, you constantly are climbing to the top of that mountain. And so pace yourself in those moments and realize, just like you said, like, that was such a great analogy, by the way. 98% of the fuel is used before they get there, and then they only use 2%, and that's the beginning. Like, that's such a great way to describe it. I've never thought of it that way, and it's so true, because we put all this effort and work and time in without getting paid for it, by the way. We're just like swirling away, and often you are eating ramen noodles. You're the one that is like going by and you're constantly reinvesting in your business, and everyone's like, oh, they're so successful, and you're like eating ramen noodles while you're constantly putting all the money back into your business to reinvest and hire the right people. And sometimes that's a mistake and you got to hire different people. And it's just, it's a constant movement forward, but sometimes it doesn't feel like that either. And I know that you help a lot of people with life strategy. I know that you coach people and really help them move through that. So you know, can you talk a little bit about that, and how when you meet with people, how you kind of help them map out their lives so that they have that long-term vision, but also that they pace themselves for like what will create the sustainable business, because that does not happen overnight. We see the end picture. We see the people with their name in lights and on the cover of Forbes, and we see this, right? But we don't see the grind that it took to get there, and the 6 times that they probably thought they were going to lose it all in the process.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And the truth is, it's true. You know, it's funny. I saw a video on Facebook the other day of of people climbing Mount Everest, and there's this one sort of traffic jam area where there's this thousands of people lined, or maybe hundreds of people lined up in this one passage. And it's interesting because when you're climbing Mount Everest, what do you see the whole way? You see snow, you see uphill, you see maybe the back of somebody in front of you, you see the hard work that's ahead of you, and so for the entire journey, you're having to face that frustration that's dead set in front of you. And at the end, though, you're hoping to get to the pinnacle and see the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life, right? Well, one of the things, like I've already said it twice now, everything starts with a dream. And it doesn't matter whether you're a business or whether you're a person. If you don't have a dream and your dream's not clearly defined, and you can't describe it to someone else in a way that they can walk away and paint it, then you're gonna have opportunity for error. And the problem is, if you're off by, if you take a trip to the moon and you're off by 1%, you miss it by a million miles. And that's the first mistake that people make, is not really clearly defining their dream. They settle into their emotionality of what they want or what their hope is, but they don't completely fill it out. So when it gets to sort of dream planning and working with individuals, and again, I typically work with success-driven people and help them align their business and their life with whatever their dream is, because it's really about identifying your gifts, your talents, all the things that are built into you, and getting them working together to produce the outcome that you want. So it all starts with the dream. You've got to define the dream. And then from there, you've got to understand, and this is what a lot of people don't do, is figure out where you are in relationship to that. Most people just start moving, right? They don't go, okay, this is my dream and this is what I want. Now, where am I in relationship to that? What are the resources I have available? What are the skills, the experience? What assets do I have? How much energy do I have? What time do I have? Right? They don't look at all of those to figure out where those pieces are in alignment with the outcome. And then that's sort of that, what I call direction. And then the third piece is discernment, which is really building the plan. Now, the struggle is people build the plan and then they start moving. And again, the problem with that is those three pieces, the dream, the direction, and the discernment really make up what I call strategic thinking. But few of us move to strategic doing. And this is the hard part. The first part of strategic doing is what I call discipline. Discipline is knowing your yes to the exclusion of everything else and saying no to everything else. Now, what happens is when people sit down to start to pursue a dream, what they forget about is that before they started to pursue that dream, they had a stack of stuff on their desk already that they were working on, other ideas they talked to people about, projects they have, ambitions that they had. And what happens between strategic thinking and strategic doing is sacrifice. I've got to take stuff off my desk in order to make room for this, right? That's that first act of discipline, and that act of saying yes to the one thing and no to everything else. Then from there, we get into drive, and the drive component says, okay, how am I going to continue to put fuel in my tank and remain engaged with what I'm doing, right? To drive a car, you got to have gas and it's got to be engaged. So how am I going to fill myself up along the journey and make sure that I remain engaged with my vision? What happens for a lot of people, the failure starts when the emotionality of failing takes over, or the emotionality of I don't know how to iterate takes over. I don't know what to do from here takes over. Self-doubt takes over. Imposter syndrome takes over. All these things take over, and that's when failure begins. So the question is, how do you prepare for those moments on the front end so that you remain engaged with your idea, right? So I have this 21 irrefutable laws of entrepreneurialism, and really one of them is just solely focused on how do I reinvent, how do I stay engaged? That piece is important. And then finally, so we've got drive and we've got we've got discipline and we've got drive. And the third component of strategic doing is delivery. Unfortunately, what happens is as entrepreneurs, we get so focused on the end that we lose sight of the little wins along the way, and they don't matter to us as much. Well, the risk you run in that is you're going to run right past them and your tank's going to run out because you don't recognize your wins. But more important than that, and this is one of the biggest things I teach people, is that what you want to do is you want to tell people what your plan is on the front end. You want to tell them what your dream is, and you want to tell them how you're going to get there. And then when you start to accomplish each one of those blocks and you get those little wins, you want to tell them you did it. Because two things are going to happen. Number one, it's self-validating. You're going to feel really good. And number two, it's self-built accountability, because every single person you tell that story to is going to say, what's next, right?
Yep.
It keeps you moving forward. And so that's really the trick. That back end trick to success is the discipline, the drive, and the delivery.
I
Yeah.
love that so much. And I agree with you 100%. And having people that hold you accountable too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be scared to speak your dreams out loud, and have people that you tell them to so that they ask you about them. It's funny that you brought up Mount Everest, because my husband, I said it was a love note he left me the other day. And he sent me a meme that said every dead body on Mount Everest was a highly motivated person. So maybe calm down.
That's good.
Right,
That's really
like,
good.
just
Yeah.
because you think about that, right, that you're just going to push through it all. And here's something else that we were just talking about before we got on live, and I appreciate that you brought up, is that, we talk about time and the energy that you have and the seasons of your business. I have a 3-month-old baby right now, and it gets, when you have this grand vision for your life and where you're going, you can't forget, like, I just think family is such an important piece of that. Like, I can't even imagine not being a mom. It's such a huge, like, I think it's, for me, just as much of a purpose than it is to build business and help entrepreneurs build business. But in this season, there's less energy, there's less sleep, there's less time, there's all of these things. And what I've learned in the process is that sometimes things ebb and flow a little bit, and you can't move like a race car straight forward all the time. You have
No.
to take these seasons in business.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And that's so again, I work with individuals, and then I also work with teams. On the individual side, I've got a process called dream planning. And what dream planning does is really kind of get at that, right? You got your dreams, but the biggest problem people have is that they're chasing life balance, right? You're starting to kind
Yeah.
of lean into that a little bit. And balance doesn't exist. You're never going to
No.
spend as much time with your family as you are, at work or, whatever else. So what I do when I take people through a couple-day process is I work them through what I call 6 different domains in your life. The first domain is your personal domain, which is the world from your perspective. It's your physical health, your intellectual health, your spiritual health, and your emotional health. Right? It's all of those pieces are sort of in that first domain. The second piece is the family domain that you mentioned, right? And that changes over the course of life. The third is your vocational piece. And the way I define that is how you produce and contribute to the world around you. The next is your financial domain, which basically funds it all, which a lot of people don't spend enough time really planning for. And then you get into your spiritual community or church environment, and then the physical community that you live in. And so the trick to getting to fulfillment as opposed to balance is to really having a clear dream for each one of those, right? What do I want in my relationships with my family? What do I want in my physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual health? What do I want in my vocational component, my church environment, my financial situation? Developing out a dream for each one of those. We all hear about dream boards, but dream boards are so focused on things and experience, and
Yep.
they leave all those other pieces out, right? They leave out the spiritual side of your life, the physical side of your life. It's all just, what do I get? And so when we do a dream board in this process, it's really what I would say is a full life dream board. And that's so important. And here's why, because one of the components about, this is another one of those 21 laws I talked about, is getting real with yourself on the front end. When you're going to pursue entrepreneurialism, you need to know what you're made of. And, if family is a high value for you, a core value, and it's a high value for you, you need to understand that on the front end, because your business is going to encroach on that. There's no way around it, right?
Yep.
So how do you prepare for it? How do you plan for it? How do you make sure that those needs are getting fulfilled? And just being honest with you, and it was really sad. I don't know, it was about 8 years ago or so. Pardon me. I was pitching another entrepreneurial idea, if you will, a business to a group of venture capitalists. And while I was sitting in the audience and someone else was pitching their idea to the same group, it was a young entrepreneur, and it was clear that, just from the way he was talking, the way he carried himself, that he was young and had a young family. And so this guy pops up, a VC pops up, who was taking a company public in the New York Stock Exchange the very next day. This guy stands up, very successful entrepreneur, and he says, great presentation. Are you married? And the guy said, yeah. He said, are you ready to get a divorce? And he said, no. And he said, then you're not getting any of my money.
Wow.
And that was a tragic outlook. I
Ouch.
said, that was right. It was a tragic outlook. And the thing is, though, is it's true for so many people.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
sacrifices that often come with entrepreneurial success are all the relationships around you. And what
Yep.
I want to challenge people to do is don't build a business on the back of broken relationships. Figure out how to maintain those relationships, build a vision for what it needs to be, and then be methodical and make sacrifices in other places that are going to allow you to meet each one of your sort of domain visions, if you will, so that the big life dream gets accomplished. But if you don't plan for that, you're going to sacrifice all the things you care about because you're going to be so holding on to this vision and this thing that, if you're really an entrepreneur, that thing you're chasing after, the bridge you're trying to build, the problem you're trying to solve, it's such an ingrained part of your DNA that you'll run past your entire life chasing it, and you won't even recognize what you're losing until it's already gone. And so it's really important on the front end to take that inventory, understand what you're built out of, understand what matters to you most, and then build your entrepreneurial plan within that construct.
Yeah, and that again ebbs and flows, and I think that everybody does business differently, and I'll kind of joke with people right now because of our schedule, and babies eat a lot, they sleep a lot, there's a lot of things going on, and so I just say, I've got a list of things that I need to do every day, and whether they happen at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 4 p.m., or 10 p.m., they're going to happen at some point during the day, and we
Right.
just have to work in this flow state. And my husband sees that too, and he's just like, like I don't really see weekends, but I'll take a day off here or there. I'll take time off where I need to. But everything just kind of flows because you talked about that work-life balance that everybody is chasing. And if you're
Yeah.
constantly trying to peg that in, it doesn't
Mhm.
work. You learn how to flow with it and move with it. And having that value, I think you get a lot more picky about the relationships that you choose to build. I think,
You
you know
have
what I
to.
mean? You have to.
Yeah.
And that you don't, you're not that social creature that's out all the time unless that's part of your business and networking and doing what you need to build business, but you're very intentional with the activities that you're doing when you do those things. And if, you talk about divorce being something that is actually very prevalent in entrepreneurship. I
Mhm.
had a statistic the other day that was brought across my desk that, if the divorce rate is 50% for most people in entrepreneurship, if both partners are entrepreneurs, it's 75% divorce rate because you're both have tunnel vision into what you want and where you're going. And so there needs to be an awareness because I believe in keeping our families together. I believe in the family unit
Yeah.
so strongly, right? Like that's a really important, actually part of my brand and part of how I coach people in entrepreneurship is like, you have to make that a priority, but it means that you can't do everything all at once. You can absolutely accomplish anything you want. It probably won't happen on your timeline. It takes a lot more time and it takes a lot more money than you think it's going to take, but it is possible for you to do that. And most people climb that first mountain and they sacrifice all of the relationships and all of the things to get to that success. And they realize when something goes sideways out of their control and they drop, right? Because people often in entrepreneurship will have a big win and then something will happen and it'll all fall apart, whether that's a personal thing like divorce or the business falls apart or whatever it is, and they get stuck in this valley of desperation. It's like the book The Second Mountain by David Brooks, and it's
Mm.
really having that vision for, okay, well, we did it once, but I'm not willing to sacrifice what so many people have lost in the process. And so maybe it's not going to happen in 5 years, maybe it'll be 10 for you, but in the process you're going to be able to maintain this beautiful relationship with your family. We were just talking about our families before we got on here, and your son building his first business and buying his first car before he can even drive on his own, and all of these values and belief systems that you've instilled in this kid to contribute
Mhm.
positively to society and be independent, whereas like we all are looking at millennials as like living at home with their parents till they're 40, right? So like it's a really interesting ride when you pay attention to those things and realize they're just as important as the business and building that aspect of your life as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's absolutely no question. Obviously the legacy component needs to be more than the business you built,
Yeah.
and what you gave and poured into others. And we've all heard this a billion times. There's not a single person on their deathbed that wished that they worked more. That's just never true. Everybody wishes they spent more time with family. And I'm in the middle of my family building still, right? My son's 15. He's not out of the house yet. there are days. There are days. But seriously, the reality is, he's not out of the house yet, and I'm already regretting the time that we've not had, and we've had a lot of time. I've basically worked from home his entire life, and yet it's not enough time, and you'll never have enough time with your family. It will never ever happen, and that's part of it, and that's why that planning piece. One of the things that you mentioned, you talked about the investment component. One of the things I love to press into people on is when I ask them, what's your most valuable asset? Everybody immediately says their house, or their bank account, or this or that. And it's not, it's your time. It's the one thing you'll never get back of. Once it's spent, it's spent. You'll never get it back. You can't make more of it. It's gone forever. So the question is, how do you invest your most important asset? And one of the time management tools that I work through people with is this concept. We have 12 hours a day of let's say, usable time, right? Those 12 hours a day, you've got 7 days a week, you've got 4.33 weeks per month, which means you have about 364 usable hours per month that you get to invest in something. And so few of us look at life that way. Where am I going to put those hours? What's going to be my economic split between each one of those hours that I have? What percent am I going to put in my family? What percent am I going to put in my business, my spiritual growth, my whatever? And and really kind of figure that out on the front end. Now, the irony in this whole thing is this: plan is a 4-letter word in my house. Believe it or not. I don't like plans. I'm like the most anti-plan person on the planet, and even I recognize, how important it is for us to really be deliberate and intentional, because the time will just go by fast. It will go by and it will be gone. And so, for me, planning feels very contrived. And I once told my wife, I don't care what you put on that calendar. You could put Disneyland on that calendar. Once it's written in that little box, it's all work in my head. And so, I really, really resist anything that just feels boxed in. But that's how important planning in your life is. And that intentionality you talked about is that we've all got to do it, because otherwise it's gone. It's just gone, and you won't ever get it back again.
Oh, it's so interesting, and you're correct. There's never enough time. Entrepreneurs also feel like there needs to be like 46 hours in a day, not 24.
Yeah.
So there's never enough time. But I also look at, like, my daughter does, she came home from school probably a month ago, and she's like, Mom, do you know that, like, people have to go somewhere to work? They have to, like, leave the house. Like, my friend, she never sees her mom and her dad. They're always at work. And I was like, yeah. And, like, I love that you don't know the difference. I love that that we do have all of this time. We're multitasking. Sometimes we're not as present as we want. There's so many things that we can critique, but in all honesty, as entrepreneurs, we end up raising our kids as a role, like we're the role model to what the rest of their life will be. So they see the hard work, they see the communication, they see the overcoming of challenges and problems, and the creativity that we need to solve them. But I look at people that have a job. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because, I was listening to this great Ed by Led podcast about how people create wealth. And, if you're not crazy blooded like us in the 7 or 8% that are entrepreneurs, and you go down the corporate route, that's actually a lot safer, easier route for a lot of people
100%.
to get to the top and make you go that route, right? But you sacrifice all this time with your family. I know I have friends that work that 9 to 5, and they're driving an hour or 2 hours to and from work, and they don't get to be present with their kids. And so there's no right way to do this, is what I'm trying to say. There's no right way to build this life. But if you don't get intentional and you don't focus on where that time is going, it just goes. Like, it just goes.
Yeah, and that comes back to what I said, that everything starts with a dream. You've got to have clarity on what that dream is. You've got to really know what it looks like, what it feels like. You've got to be able to describe it. One of the things I say to folks is again, I said it a minute ago, is that if you sit down with somebody who is going to paint whatever you say, they need to be able to go into a room and paint your dream with such detail that it looks like the picture you had in your head. If you can't describe your dreams in that kind of detail. So, for example, if I say to you, my dream is to live in a house on a hill with a white picket fence, with, the ocean crashing up against the shoreline, and kids playing in the yard, and an oak tree with a swing, and dogs running around, you get that picture in your head. You know exactly what I'm saying. you can attach to that emotionally because it looks serene. It sounds beautiful. It sounds, leisurely. It sounds wonderful, right? And so many people never take the time to really think about their life that way. What do I want my life to legitimately look like? What do I want to be emotionally attached to in my life? And so the problem is this: if you don't have that picture super clear, super simple, super refined, and I kind of work through all of that with folks. If you don't have that picture super clear, super simple, super refined, to a point where somebody can listen to it and emotionally attach to it, number one, it's blurry to you, which means that you're probably not going to hit it. You're going to get easily distracted. You're not attached to it yourself. The people around you are not attached to it, so they can't hem you in, right? Life is a community, right? And you're just not ever going to get there, and you're going to live unsatisfied, and you're going to live a life unfulfilled. And to your point, it's everybody's dream is different. For some people, that dream is exactly what you said. They want security. They want that 9 to 5. They want to know that they're going to go in, they're going to work from this point to this point, and they're going to get this, pay out of it, and they're going to do something they generally enjoy, and that just feels safe. That safety and security is important to them. For entrepreneurs, safety and security is not important. It's not a high value, right? And if it is, you probably shouldn't be doing it, unless you're in the safety and security business. But the point is that you got to know yourself. And so many people, gosh, I could save people thousands and thousands of dollars and so much heartache by just helping them figure out stuff so that you could identify, what, I'm one of the 93% that probably shouldn't run out and start a business, because there's a lot of people that go start businesses that shouldn't be doing it.
Yep.
And it's just going to lead to heartache, loss of money, loss of time, and failure, and a lot of depression. And it's like, if people just knew themselves on the front end and asked that question, am I really in for this? Yeah, okay, it was a great idea, but is it worth my life?
Yeah, well, that's just it. Is it worth your life, right? And I think that, you talk about the house and painting the picture. We have manifested houses. We've sat down and wrote everything out that we want, and then moved into a house and been like, this is what was on that piece of paper that we wanted, right?
Yeah.
Or the life that we get to live now here in Mexico, things that, traveling the world with our family, like, you have to know and be willing to work for those things, which is probably a lot harder than most people are willing to work, right? And probably overcoming a lot more challenges than most people are willing to overcome, but you know what you want, so you're willing to go for it. And that's really what it comes down to, that you have the discipline, like you said, and the drive, and the destination, right? If you don't have a destination in mind, you can't GPS a parked car. If that car doesn't know where it's going, you can't tell it where to go. So you have to have a very clear picture of your goal. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Like, you are so insightful, and I really appreciate reconnecting with you and being able to have this conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get a ton out of it. Where can they find you? If they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, go to TonyFerraro.com. TonyFerraro.com.
I love it.
Yeah, TonyFerraro.com, and you can connect with me there, and would love to help anybody and everybody sort of navigate some of these things for their life or their business.
Amazing. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you. That's another episode of Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Freedom Motivated with your host, me, Christina Whiteley. We hope that the stories we've shared today have sparked a fire within you and ignited your passion for living life on your terms. Remember, true freedom lies in the choices we make and the actions we take. So go out there and embrace your journey. Take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, and never settle for less than what you deserve. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Freedom Motivated podcast and never miss out on our upcoming interviews with more incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders. Be bold. Be brave, be disruptive. You are capable of things far beyond your wildest dreams if you just have the courage to go for it. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Until next time, may you always be driven by the desire for freedom and motivated to make your dreams a reality.